The snow had been falling quietly for hours. Soft, steady, almost peaceful. On evenings like this, most people hurried home. Warm lights in windows, the smell of dinner, the comfort of familiar voices. But Caleb Whitmore was still walking. Caleb was 58 years old. Tall, neatly dressed, the kind of man people immediately assumed was important. And in many ways, he was. He was the CEO of a large technology company in Boston, a man with more money than he would ever need. Yet tonight, he walked alone. Caleb had developed a habit over the past few years. After long meetings and endless emails, he liked to walk through the old city park near his office. It reminded him of something simpler. Of the life he had before success, before boardrooms, before headlines and stock prices. The park looked different in the snow. The benches were dusted white. The lamps glowed softly through the falling flakes. Caleb pulled his coat tighter and walked along the familiar path. And that's when he noticed her. At first, he thought someone had simply left a coat on the bench. But then the coat moved. A small figure sat hunched forward, her head resting weakly against her arm. Caleb slowed his steps. The child looked about 8 or 9 years old. She wore a red sweater, slightly too thin for the winter night. Her blonde hair had gathered tiny snowflakes. Her breathing sounded uneven. Caleb's chest tightened. He stepped closer. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly. The girl lifted her head slowly. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. Her blue eyes looked up at him with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Please help, my chest hurts so much. I can't breathe." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The distant hum of traffic, the whisper of the snow, everything faded. Caleb knelt beside the bench. He had led billion-dollar negotiations without blinking. But this small moment, this frightened child, made his heart pound harder than any business deal ever had. He raised a calm hand gently toward her shoulder. Hey, it's okay," he said quietly. "Don't talk right now. Just breathe. I'm here." The girl closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. Her name, Caleb would soon learn, was Emily Carter. Emily had been walking home from a nearby apartment complex. Her mother worked late shifts at a hospital cafeteria. Emily had insisted she could walk the short distance alone. She had done it many times before. But tonight the cold air felt sharper. And halfway through the park, the pain in her chest began. She thought if she sat down for a moment, it might pass. It didn't. Caleb quickly removed his wool coat and wrapped it around her small shoulders. Her hands were freezing. "Emily," he said gently after she managed to whisper her name. "I'm calling for help, all right?" She gave the smallest nod. Caleb pulled out his phone and dialed emergency services. His voice stayed calm, steady, clear. But inside, something deeper stirred. Something he had not felt in a long time. Concern that had nothing to do with profit or loss. While they waited, Caleb sat beside her on the bench. The snow continued falling. Soft, quiet, patient. Emily's breathing came in shallow waves. Caleb remembered something suddenly. When his own daughter had been little, years ago, she sometimes had panic attacks when she struggled to breathe during asthma flare-ups. He spoke slowly. "Emily, listen to my voice." She opened her eyes slightly. "Take a slow breath in, through your nose." She tried. Good, he said gently. Now let it out, slowly. They repeated it together. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm began to steady her breathing. Minutes later, the sound of an ambulance approached through the snowy streets. Paramedics rushed over. They placed oxygen gently over Emily's nose and checked her pulse. One of them looked at Caleb. You stayed with her? Caleb nodded. Of course. Emily reached weakly for his hand before they lifted her onto the stretcher. Her voice was faint. Don't leave. Caleb squeezed her hand softly. I won't. At the hospital, doctors quickly learned what had happened. Emily had a heart condition her mother did not yet know about. The cold, and the stress on her small body, had triggered a dangerous episode. But because help arrived quickly, she would recover. Late that night, Caleb sat quietly in the hospital hallway. Across from him sat Laura Carter, Emily's mother. Laura looked exhausted. Her work uniform was still dusted with flour from the cafeteria kitchen. She had rushed straight from her shift when she got the call. Tears filled her eyes as she spoke. I can't thank you enough, she said. I didn't even know she had a heart condition. Caleb shook his head gently. No thanks needed, he replied. I just happened to be walking through the park. But as he said the words, he knew something deeper was true. Sometimes, life places us exactly where we need to be. A doctor soon came out with reassuring news. Emily was stable. She would need treatment and monitoring, but she would be all right. Laura broke down in quiet relief. Caleb placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Weeks passed. Emily began treatment for her heart condition. Caleb visited occasionally. At first, Laura felt awkward accepting help from a man whose watch alone probably cost more than her yearly salary. But Caleb never made it about money. He brought books, warm scarves, and sometimes just quiet conversation. Emily loved to draw. One afternoon she handed Caleb a picture she had made. It showed a snowy bench, a little girl, and a tall man sitting beside her. Above them she had drawn a small yellow light. What's the light? Caleb asked with a smile. Emily shrugged shyly. It's when someone shows up when you need them. Caleb felt his throat tighten slightly. For decades he had believed success meant building companies, expanding markets, achieving more. But that small drawing reminded him of something far more important. Success can also mean simply being there. Being present. Months later, Emily's health improved greatly with treatment. Her energy returned. Her laughter filled the small hospital room during her final checkup. Before leaving, she ran to Caleb and hugged him tightly. You saved my life, she said. Caleb smiled warmly. No, Emily, he said softly. You reminded me how important life is. That winter evening on the snowy bench had changed more than one life. Caleb still ran his company. Still attended meetings. Still signed contracts. But now he made time for different things too. Community clinics. Children's health programs. Scholarships. Not for recognition. Not for headlines. Simply because kindness, once experienced, tends to grow. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when snow begins to fall again, Caleb Whitmore still walks through the park. Past the bench where he first met a frightened little girl. He pauses there for a moment. Not with sadness, but with quiet gratitude. Because life has a gentle way of reminding us that the greatest wealth we can ever hold is the chance to help someone breathe a little easier.